Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories, shall we? The first story is called Ultimately Not Our Problem. 7 months into my apartment lease, I received a letter from the gas company stating that I needed to set up an account and start paying, else my service would be interrupted. I was very confused. My roommates and I, 5 people in total, all signed the lease believing all utilities were included. Our lease stated how we could pay utilities where applicable, and based on our conversation with the landlord prior to renting, all 5 of us left the apartment tour interpreting the lease as including utilities. I truly don't know whose error that was, but the fact that all 5 of us believed the same thing makes me think someone on the building site was mistaken. The unit was managed by one firm, owned by another, and I never knew who worked for the landlord and who for the management firm. I sent an email to the landlord asking about this gas notice, and she told me that utilities were never included and that I must set up gas and also electric accounts. I set up a gas account, and to my surprise we've been charged no back bills at all. 7 months of free gas. One of my roommates goes to do the same thing with electricity, but to our surprise our apartment unit number is not listed on the website. Our building has 6 units, 101, 102, 201, 202 and so on. But for the 3rd floor only one drop-down option exists. Free. There is no unit free. We call the electric company, who tells us that it's ultimately not our problem. If the landlord didn't include our unit number in their paperwork to receive building service, we aren't responsible for her mistake. The phone rep from the electric company, perhaps in a risky act of pro-college student solidarity, advises us to not contact our landlord. He told us we are not legally required to inform her of her mistake in setting up electric service. She is probably paying both electric bills for 301 and 302, thinking it's the hall lights and laundry machines. Not our fault, we just did what we were told. The next story is called Do What I Tell You to Do. This was a few years ago when I worked in a 4-star hotel chain that would be very well known and was part of a larger company that had hotels of varying status. I was about 24, there were a few of us who worked primarily in room service, and the breakfast shift was always a solo shift. One morning I started, and as was customary, I started doing my prep, folding napkins, setting up 5 or 6 trays with pastries, etc. per the pre-ordered breakfast cards. This way I would only need to grab the correct tea or coffee and hot food later, as well as a few extra all-purpose trays for the people who call for room service last minute. I just get finished with this when the duty manager, nicknamed Prem, burst into the kitchen with a dirty plate in his hand. He sees me in my area while putting it in the pile of dishes for the kitchen porter. He yells across the kitchen, "What are you doing here? It's so crazy out there that I have to help clear tables, and you are back here? Get out and help." I replied that I had not gone up and walked the halls to collect the trays left out overnight yet. He yelled some more and repeated that if he, a manager, is clearing tables, I better help regardless of if my job is actually in a different area. For the record, Prem was a menace. I witnessed him yell in college girls' faces until they cried, several times. He would also routinely pick on anyone that was minimum wage floor staff. So I walk into the restaurant and the supervisor, Jen, is at the door and sees me walk in. She covers room service and has worked it in the past, so she knows I should be collecting trays now so that the place doesn't look like a war zone upstairs. She asked if I have done this, and I say no. Prem sent me in to help because it's so busy. She says it's not very busy at all, they don't need me, and I should go upstairs and collect the dirty trays. I walk back into the kitchen and Prem is still standing there. "What are you doing? I told you to go in and help." I went in and Jen said they don't need me and told me to collect the trays. He then accuses me of going to her and asking if I can go collect trays to get out of helping. So I tell him he can go and ask her if she called me or if I approached her. This satisfies him that I am at least not lying, but he's still not happy. He says, "I'm the duty manager. Jen is the supervisor. I'm higher up, so you do what I tell you. Go in there and help clear tables. I don't want to see you going up to collect trays." I go back into the restaurant and Jen looks at me confused. I tell her that Prem insists that I help and won't let me go upstairs and says he outranks her, so she says I should join the guys at Station 1 and help their area. Breakfast passes and I pop out a few times to do my room services and come back with not much issue. My shift is until 3 PM and breakfast ended at 10:30 AM. At this point nobody has been upstairs and housekeeping will have been putting out dirty trays. I get a call on the room service mobile from a housekeeping manager saying that floor 4 has a dozen or so trays in the hall. I'm sorry, the duty manager has prioritized other areas at the moment and has said I cannot go up. I start doing my afternoon prep, polishing cutlery and the like. At about 12 PM I get another call, this time from the housekeeping stop manager. She tells me there are trays everywhere, and I politely apologize and explain that my duty manager has used the exact words, "I don't want to see you going up to collect trays." She accepts this without question and asks that I help when I can. At 2 PM I get a call from the hotel's director of operations regarding the trays. At this point there are trays in the hallways on all 7 floors and the place looks filthy. Again, I politely explain what instructions I've received from Prem, and this is accepted without further question, and he says he will inquire into it. 3 PM arrives and I have not heard anything else, nor have I cleaned up the pigsty upstairs. My replacement arrives and I tell him what happened and apologize for the fact that he will have to collect these, but tell him why. He laughs and decides to leave it until somebody else calls and informs him they are there. Shortly after this, Prem left the company. The third story is called Sweet Silence. 3 years ago, I worked at a non-profit that provided birdhouses to create a habitat for birds. Each bird has a specific type of birdhouse that will work for it, and the birdhouses all have very specific requirements for installation. The birdhouse has to be the right height, a certain distance away from roads, houses, power lines, can't be too big or too small, and on and on. So many requirements. No one ever got it right, and they would have a million questions that they would rather ask a person about than read the information on the website. So they called and called. I would spend hours looking things up on the website and reading them to the callers. Calls could take an hour if I let them go as long as the callers wanted to. I think bird people are just lonely. But I was required to continue the calls until the caller wanted to get off the phone. Then it happened. I figured out that if I asked people for a donation, encouraged always at non-profits, their tone would shift and all of a sudden they didn't want to talk to me. They would pretty much find any excuse to get off the phone. So I started setting a timer for 5 minutes and answer whatever questions they had with zeal. After the 5 minutes were up, I started redirecting the conversation. Bluebirds need birdhouses like the one you are calling about, but sadly there aren't enough homes for these poor birds. You be able to make a monthly contribution to help more bluebirds like the ones you love in your backyard? We have your credit card on file and would be happy to bill you for $5, $10 or $20 a month. Hello? Hello? They would literally hang up on me. Sweet, sweet silence. The next story is called Never Second Shift Again. This story dates back to when I was 20. I happened to work at Mr. Walton's club and my store manager was kind of a jerk to me. So I didn't enjoy the job and really was only there because I happened to work a night shift of 6 AM to 2:30 PM, Monday to Friday, 30-minute unpaid lunch. To be honest, it was my first non-third shift job and I really liked what I did because it was easy and I got away with pretty much doing nothing. I was part of the maintenance crew that would help by cleaning things, helping where needed, handling spills, etc. For those of you who don't know, the Walton companies do not like overtime at all. At all. I've been pulled into the office for getting 3 to 7 minutes of overtime 4 weeks in a row. So I worked my daily morning shift Monday to Friday, with the very occasional Saturday because the Saturday guy was off and I had to cover. Okay. I don't mind the occasional Saturday with Monday off. I would even stay late some days because something would happen and they would need my help. I wasn't a go-getter, but I would definitely help where needed and stay busy. However, if I stayed late, I would have to leave early at a different day to keep my 40 hours. What I would not do is work a different shift completely without being asked. One week I saw that I was on the schedule for the second shift because the second shifter asked off. I didn't get an option, they just scheduled me. I brought it up to my boss's attention and he basically told me to suck it up. Cue my thought of malicious compliance. That second shift day happened to be at the end of my work week, so I made sure to show up a little early and stay a little late every day before that, upwards of 2 hours one day. I stayed busy working and doing things that needed to be done, but definitely didn't need my somewhat slow pace. My second shift day comes. I go into work about 12 or 1 PM and stay about an hour and a half. Then I walk up to one of my assistant managers and inform her that I'm about 10 minutes from overtime. Do you want me to stay or should I go home? She informed me I should go home and have a nice day. About 45 minutes later, after I'm at home enjoying a cookout with my girlfriend and friends, I got a call from work. Curious, I answer, and it's my manager. He says, "Hey, where are you? We've had a spill and been calling you on the walkie for 20 minutes. I informed him that I was at my 40 hours already, and didn't the assistant manager tell you? He says, "Oh, okay, she didn't tell me. See you tomorrow." I said okay, have a nice day, and proceeded to enjoy the rest of my night. For some reason I was never scheduled for second shift again. The last story is called "Wait Until Your Father Finds Out About It." This happened when I was 16 years old and just got my driver's license. My parents had me run to the store to pick up some groceries. I stopped by my friend's house on the way back home for maybe 5 minutes to show him I got my license and I was out driving alone. It was a really fun moment in the life of a 16-year-old. My stepmom freaked out. "We did not give you permission to drive to your friend's house. We told you to go to the store and that is all." I told her and my dad that they had let me drive to another friend's house the day before, so I didn't think it was a big deal. They went unreasonable and laid down the unbendable rule that set up the malicious compliance. You are not allowed to drive anywhere we do not give explicit permission for you to drive. Period. End of sentence. Just because you were allowed to do it previously does not ever give you permission another time. Ever. Fast forward 3 days later, my 13-year-old stepsister has been a jerk to me all day and I'm sick of her. She goes quiet for about 30 minutes and then comes out all sticky sweet. "Hey, it's time to take me to ballet." I have taken her to ballet 3 days a week since I got my license. It's basically one of my chores, but I see my opportunity to say screw you to all 3 of them at once. "Sorry, I'm not allowed to take you to ballet. The parents didn't tell me to take you and I don't want to get in trouble." She screams, she cries, she begs, she threatens. She calls her mom and leaves a message. She calls my dad and leaves a message. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to hang on to the bitter end and actually go through with it. I'm shaking, but I know I've got them with this. No callback from the parents and the clock goes on past the start of her class. Stepmom comes home and my stepsister runs to meet her. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at ballet." I hear her tell her rendition of the story, leaving out how miserable she had been, and they go back and forth. Stepmom comes pounding down the hall and yells, "You just wait till your father gets home." I had to stifle a laugh because I never really believed people would actually say that. An hour later, Dad comes home and the 2 of them go running out to meet him and tell him how horrible I was. I wait in my room for the hammer to fall. About 10 minutes later, my dad calls down the hall. "Would you please come here and talk to us?" "Well, you did it." "What do you mean, Dad?" "You got us all and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it." "Okay, let's make this reasonable for everyone." And they did. They agreed that they were over the top. They recognized that my stepsister isn't always very nice to me and they spoke to her about that. I was allowed to have reasonable freedom if I was driving somewhere, since I had good grades and had never been in trouble. I walked down the hall back to my room, my back to my parents, with the world's biggest grin on my face. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. It really helps in the algorithm. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.